thought too to kind of mix up how I've been organizing my thoughts, and I've migrated from creating um, auditory or visual content towards textual content or writing, whatever, to kind of organize, collate, synthesize some of the ideas of which I've been finding myself attending to as a means of organizing some of the chaos of experience. I'm assuming that is influencing a sense of my emotional connections to reality. Um, and I think this is a part of, I think as a human being, for anybody, we come into the world, I think, with a direct sensory experience of a reality, absent of a, I think, symbolic guideline as to how reality is supposed to be or should be felt, and that's through language. How language is orients us to through a social relationship with other people, how we should be feeling to the world, um, and in order to be recognizable, intelligible, understandable to others within a certain social frame or social world. And I, we can often understand through that a socialization process that we then start to recognize or we might learn to become negatively attached to the world, or positively attached, of course, in another way. And I'm interested in actually understanding the sort of negative attachments, especially the emotional, affective, negative attachments to how I should be navigating life. And this goes directly to what I've been reading, and I've been, whatever. I've been really interested in Slavoz Zizek recently, I think for the past year or two now, starting with The Sublime Object of Ideology, and really having no clear understanding of a lot of his conceptual frameworks, because they're really complex and they're abstract sometimes, as he's referencing deeply people like Karl Marx, Jacques Lacan, Althusser, who else are these people? I think there's this German guy, Kant, Immanuel Kant. Yeah, there's a bunch of people. He's referencing sort of to organize his language around the idea of the sublime object of ideology, and through what I have done as somebody who is just really curious rather than kind of granted a privilege of working through philosophy in the academy and other people, being surrounded by people, because I'm not surrounded by other people who read the same stuff as me, other than some friends, but they're still not interested in this topic. So I'm mostly adventuring into the world of theory alone, and this is why I'm so grateful for things like AI. So inversely from the fear and terror of the AI overtake, there is the opportunity of breakdown and clarification where AI can become a teacher. And I think that's been so fascinating, is that AI can become a teacher, in the sense that while it doesn't have a capacity to generate knowledge from experience, it does have the capacity to collate or organize texts and interpretations of text from the past into um, a, a sort of synthesis, if you allow it, because then you can be the generative factor into the play of understanding. As you input your curiosities and your experiences in some sense into AI, it can take that fresh, abstract experience, whatever, concrete, abstract, and then organize it within its database to create a reflection point of growth and knowledge. In some sense, it's still absent of direct, phenomenal, experience as another human being. So that's being conscientious of the limits of AI, is that it's not going to allow you a sense of integration into reality in some pure sense of the now and the present, but it does grant you a stepping stone towards something of an integration, maybe of a certain collection of curiosities that can allow you a jumping point towards those opportunities. And so from Sublime Object, I went into the parallax view, read parallax view. Fascinating. I'm completely fascinated with all of it. It's absolutely really in my fascinations, because I was just going through a lot of shit, like everybody does, psychologically, forever, right? I just overthinking things, or desiring to know, and through that desiring of knowing, like creating sometimes more problems, because then I have more conceptuals of experience, and through that abundance I then have opposing conceptual frameworks, and then it's both my own psychic unconscious or subconscious, um, then acting out in its own egoic concretizing action. So then I have my, we have our own personal, is all I'm saying, and then we have our own abstractions of conceptual means of understanding experience. So I just end up overwhelming myself a lot. Anyway, so just getting into parallax view, I went and jumped into the plague of fantasies, and I just thought, yeah, I was really, I'm I wanted to read this book because the past year, I was just overwhelmed, personally, by what I was emotionally, effectively, or whatever, intellectually, understanding, as a sense of my um, own relationship with um, my surroundings, my own, and the sort of reflections of myself, and the patterns, I suppose, of those reflections projected onto me, and how I could see what I was in the social worlds that I was navigating. Um, and it was overwhelming me. It was making me really depressed, because, yeah, I was seeing a part of myself as not deserving. And I think this is something more, this is a longer term experience of my own, is that, like, I think it's within the ideology or the social relations, um, through how reality of the now is organized within the economy, and other political, um, and economic, and social factors, um, historic factors play into um, a certain kind of conceptual, um, concrete understanding of my position within a dynamic, this dynamic, and it was exhausting me. It was really isolating, and then it would lead into neurotic, it would lead into depression, it would lead into isolation. It was like, and even the desire. So then I would then question, like, why am I striving for something? Like, I mean, once we get out of the frame of the lifespan itself of a human being, or that, like, um, that there is, um, no actual object to attain in the direct conscious sense of experience, as if I am an absolute conscious being. And yes, I am an actor, and I have a choice of my actions in the present. Um, but in the same sense, anyway, going back to this actor, um, I was just overwhelmed generally. And so, and I think a lot, even from self help at that point, I started to get curious, or I started to distance myself from the self help. I think it was just more of an ego resentment or distance when I started to jump into queer social justice circles. And it's going on forever, but where I was interested in self help and yet also distancing myself from it, because from the circles that I was navigating, self help was kind of often organizing how to be a productive or functioning, logical, um, stable entity in the social field. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, in some sense, it does make sense. I think there's a good advice in there, but yeah. In another way, it's kind of like how to train yourself to be moving, even though you probably hate yourself and the people around you, um, and then just fuck off. I mean, that's probably it's just like, do you want? It's just like feeling self help as bad. It's like self help is like this. It's like, I know you don't want to wake up in the morning. I know you don't want to talk to them. I know you don't want to go to work. I know you don't want to do anything. But if you do it, just look what can happen. So it's like, I feel it's not 100% true, but it is partially true. It's like, well, life is terrible. But if you keep doing it, like there's something there. There's something there. Look at it. Can you see it? It's okay. That's okay. I know it's not okay here, but over there it's okay. So then you're kind of like you're like, it doesn't address the symptom. Like, I mean, the symptom of like, well, why is all this other stuff so drab and disgusting and horrible and painful? And it's like, but that over there, that natural thing that's just being outside of the social world that I'm forced to, live through in some sense. And if that's psychological or if that's literal, who knows? But in another way, it's sometimes, yeah, it feels a bit like, I'm not saying it's all bad. I like some self help. I do like some of it. And I think some of it's super useful and it's also confusing. And good. And then, yeah, so that happened. And then, so from Parallax View, Plague of Fantasies, and then that was kind of setting up some neurotic states of being in a contemporary context from Zizek's analysis from sublime objects and stuff. So I kind of got it, and then but it's very complex and it's really thinky, and I love that in some sense, because it's like, well, why? Because it's like uncovering the ego, and like I think my desire, even as I'm shaking right now, is to disassemble that ego so I can live better. I mean, oh God, if I can live better, live more in this moment, because I don't like. There's a. I'm trying to work through who I was before, and how I shaped the world as a young person, was one of, I think, a lot. I wasn't very happy with reality. um, just like the feedback that I think I got from experience through my earlier moments, such as, I don't know, I had attachments that didn't really follow what I was supposed to. I kind of liked femininity in a way from a very young age, quite much more than I did find attachments to masculinity. and then I completely gave up. I didn't find any attachments to much of masculinity in its traditional sense. Sometimes I did, whatever that masculine, what boys liked, but I was more interested in the feminine aspects of experience. I don't know if it was a resonance, like an attachment, um, unconsciously, or probably, but in another way, I was just like, I don't really care about muscles and being super strong and fighting and all that shit. It's like, it's just not, it's not a desire. It's more just like, I think, performance of oneself. If a definition of femininity was understood through me, it was like, um, and the characters of the people that resonate with simply just like being myself, and kind of recognizing who I am, through my observation of myself and how the world understands me and I understand the world. And it's just like, why can't I just honor that rather than holding up this ideal image of a certain idea of who I need to become? Because I have always hated this, and I just felt so objectified, or at loss of who I am by attaching to the ideal of the man or anything like that. It just was like, ugh. And then when I would be back in the place too, where it's like, I'm not the ideal, I'm not the man, and then I'm not striving in the ways the man should, or maybe I am, again, going to the gym and trying to lift as much weight as possible, and trying to impress something, and kind of compulsory social acceptance of a certain type of person that I should be becoming, that 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 recognizes is recognized in a way that means something, and it's just isolating. But I don't know, maybe some people live that way. So those are things. Now I'm reading back Sublime Object. So through all of this, I keep going back because I don't really understand everything about what's a lot, even Zizek. But I go to Zizek because it's like a synthesis of a lot of curiosities that I carry, because I started with Marx, and then through psychological neurotic patterns, I eventually led to psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis prior to that was kind of like spirituality and self-help and Buddhism. Um, and psychoanalysis takes it, like, it kind of goes whack in some crazy shit, and I like it in a way, because I'm like, maybe that's gonna help me. And so now I'm back in Sublime Object, and now I'm really curious about Marx. And today, for example, this is why I kind of made this video, I guess, whatever, in some way, is that I'm really curious about what it means to be a participant in the market, in the economy, as a person. And I think the idea of when we are children, that we come into the world, and through that coming into the world, we are contributors to a market. That's really fascinating to me, because when I was young, I carried a very positive valence to my participation in a market, and through my participation, I can contribute some social good to the world. And so I came in with like a naive, utopian idea of what it meant to be human, to a total social contribution. And I was sort of very much holding on to that idea way into, I heard the sort of dissatisfaction that people carried about economics and labor value and feeling used, and disrespected and violated. And then I was like, okay, well, it can't be that bad. And then I went into it, and I was like, well, this is not too bad. And that's when I first my had career job. I worked at university, and I was like, this is not too bad. I don't know if people keep talking about it being so horrible. And I was like, okay, I'm contributing, and I'm feeling a sense of recognition. And then I read Marx. I read just his manifesto at that time, and it was like, whoa, there's something deeper here going on, and it's really horrible. And that's when my sort of contribution, sort of positivity, changed into negation, or not negation necessarily, but negativity, and a sort of depressive stance against the capitalist order, and then I went resentful, and then I went angry, and then but I couldn't wash away that, and maybe I wasn't supposed to wash away that, because I mean, as you mature through what Marx was trying to present as a means of understanding how capital ended up operating through a profit mindset. So where money produces commodity, commodity to produce money, outside of the logic of commodity to money production towards commodity, where the end goal, means goal is to produce commodity for the consumers of commodities rather than for the producers of capital, or the organizers or the owners of production through capital. So yeah, you start to see this like, oh, it's not really a game. That's, if I'm growing into this world where I'm interested in contribution over wealth and status and prestige, then I'm already lost. I've already lost the game in some sense. And then you can kind of see the social feedbacks through how people within care services in a capitalist economy or society, a market society, are often abused and disrespected, overworked, underpaid. Yeah, and that's always, I mean, as I've worked, not like I quit my job and then I was working in the lower forms of labor value, I started to see these kind of social patterns where people who were, I think, either unconscious or weren't, did not understand empathy through whatever coincidence of experience, ended up enacting violent forms of discipline to maintain the logic of capital reproduction as a priority over the well-being of a human dignity. And so, yeah, through these consequences, I started to see this happen. This was just what happened recently, too. But this is a lot of conceptual apparatus from my own experience, too. So this is where I'm kind of stuck sometimes. I just ended up quitting a job. And I feel like a part of it is still, like, my own resentment to this market economy. People say, what is the alternative? I don't even know the alternative, to be honest. I have no idea what, I mean, in some we say eco-social, democratic eco-socialism, and the dismantling of the profit motive that requires an exploitation, but also is not compatible with the speculative AI future, as Marx, and this is what something I was reading about today, was like, one of the things about capital production is like, yes, it's horrible in the sense of an exploitative class. It requires a vulnerable class, and it requires a surplus population, or a population where it can extract as much value as possible from any means possible, to meet the demands of the social value. And that social value of labor is determined by competitive factors as well. So there's all these sort of abstractions, economic abstractions, which are pressing on. This is the pressure of human dignity, in the sense of, yeah, in order to maintain the logics of the system. So there are just, like, the system is simply a reversal, objectification of humanity in order to reproduce itself. And so that's one of the contradictions of capital, is that it's an objectifying systemic form of economic commodity production that it's not really for the human per se, as whereas for itself. It simply desires the reproduction of itself and That's why you get the hoarding and the greed and the 1% and the blah blah blah. So it's not so great, but it's whatever. It's whatever. And then yeah, I'm so tired right now. So that's pretty much it when I'm just reading here. Yeah, so the social relations thing, it's terrible in some sense. And it's about detaching, I think, from myself to this logic of like how commodity fetishism works in the same sense where there's this idea of I think we come into the world thinking like okay, there's all this social value and we have to increase or accrue social value, and once you realize those are all stories, they're not really real. They're just more in how we've organized the world in regard to the economy and things. Is that allows you freedom to kind of just be yourself, but then you're constantly in a blah blah blah. Zizek says to that relationship where you're like, but it still is. I know it's there, but I still participate because you still do, and I'm still doing when I'm making this video. Okay. Well, thanks so much for listening. Bye bye.